When someone with an avoidant attachment style starts to love you, one of the first things you'll notice, if you're paying close attention, is that their guard slips in subtle but meaningful ways. Avoidants are masters of self-protection. They've spent years, often since childhood, building invisible walls around their emotions. To them, intimacy can feel dangerous, even threatening. So when they begin to let you see parts of them they usually keep hidden, that is not an accident. It's not random. It is in many ways their love language. You might notice this in very small, almost imperceptible moments. Maybe they share a personal story about their past. Not one of those light, casual anecdotes they tell everyone, but something real, something that shaped them. And when they do, it might come out almost reluctantly, like they're testing the waters. They might quickly change the subject or make a joke to diffuse the emotional weight of the moment. That's their defense mechanism kicking in. But the fact that they allowed that vulnerability to surface at all is a powerful signal. It means you have earned a level of trust that very few people get to experience. Another way their guard slips is through emotional transparency that catches even them off guard. Avoidants often pride themselves on being in control, staying cool, calm, and detached. But love disrupts that equilibrium. They might find themselves revealing their feelings about something, frustration, hope, even affection, in a way that surprises them. It might be quick, almost a slip of the tongue, but if you're present enough, you'll see it. And here's the thing, those moments matter more than hours of verbal reassurance from someone else. Because for an avoidant, letting down the mask even for a second takes incredible courage. There's also a physical dimension to this. Some avoidants struggle with physical closeness, not because they don't want it, but because it makes them feel exposed. So when they start letting you into their personal space, sitting closer, staying longer, maybe even allowing moments of quiet together without feeling the need to escape, that is a form of intimacy. They are letting their body communicate what their mind still hesitates to say out loud. This is why it's so important to recognize and honor these small cracks in the armor. If you misinterpret them, you might dismiss them as insignificant or overlook them entirely. But when you can see them for what they are, acts of bravery, it changes the way you relate to that person. You start to understand that love for them doesn't always look like grand gestures or constant verbal affirmation. Sometimes it's as simple as them letting you see their raw humanity for just a moment. And here's the part that's so fascinating, and maybe a little humbling: these moments are not just signs that they trust you. They are also signs that they are learning to trust themselves again. Love for an avoidant can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if they'll be caught if they fall. So when they open up, when they let you see their fears, their wounds, their dreams, they are choosing to take that leap. The key is to be present enough to notice and patient enough to let them come forward at their own pace. Because when you do, those moments of vulnerability become the foundation for something deeper, something real. And if you take only one thing away from this, let it be this: when an avoidant lets their guard slip, don't just see it as a rare moment, see it as a gift. Because for them it is. Absolutely. Here's your 600-word expansion of key point 2 in the same tone and flow. One of the clearest signs that an avoidant secretly loves you isn't something they say. It's something they do quietly, consistently, almost like gravity. They create proximity, not loud, obvious closeness, not declarations or grand displays, just presence. They begin orbiting your world in small, deliberate ways, and while it may look casual on the surface, it's anything but. For someone whose default mode is distance, choosing to remain near you is an act of deep significance. Understand this: avoidants often equate closeness with danger. Intimacy triggers old emotional alarms. It threatens the fragile equilibrium they've built to keep their hearts safe. So when they start showing up, when they linger after a conversation, when they choose the seat next to you instead of the one across the room, when they subtly align their routines with yours, that's not coincidence. That's love working its way past their defenses. You might notice them hovering at the edges of your space, almost like they're testing how much closeness they can tolerate without losing their sense of control. They won't announce it. They might even pretend it's nothing. But the truth is, proximity is their compromise, their way of giving you closeness without surrendering to vulnerability too fast. It's safer for them to be around you than to express why they want to be around you. That's how their heart negotiates with their fear. There's something beautifully paradoxical about this. While they may appear detached, they're carefully engineering opportunities to be near you, just close enough to feel connected, but not so close that they risk emotional overwhelm. That tension between longing and fear is the emotional tightrope they walk every day. And if you can see through the surface, you'll notice that what seems like passivity is actually courage in disguise. They might volunteer to help you with something small. They might show up where they know you'll be, not to dominate your attention, but simply to share the same space. They might even retreat at times, only to reappear like a tide that can't help returning to shore. These quiet patterns are their love language in motion. It's the soul reaching out without words. And it's important not to confuse their subtle proximity with indifference. For someone with an avoidant nature, remaining close takes far more effort than pulling away. Distance is easy. Distance is familiar. Closeness costs them something. So when they choose it, when they inch closer, even silently, it means they're investing something precious. This is where patience becomes powerful. If you try to force them to articulate what they're feeling too soon, they may retreat. But if you can hold space, if you can simply allow their presence without demanding an explanation for it, you give them the safety they need to move closer on their own. Love grows in the spaces where pressure fades and permission begins. And here's the truth. When someone who fears closeness chooses to stay near, they're telling you everything, just not in words. They're saying, I feel safer with you than I do with my own walls. That may be the most vulnerable confession they're capable of giving. So if you see an avoidant quietly orbiting your life, don't underestimate it. That's not hesitation. That's devotion in its purest, most fragile form. Absolutely. Here's your 600-word expansion of key point 3, keeping the same tone and flow. When an avoidant secretly loves you, one of the most revealing signs isn't loud or flashy. It's in what they notice. Avoidants are highly observant, often hyper-aware of their environment and the people in it. This comes from years of learning to scan for emotional threats, to stay one step ahead of pain. But when that deep awareness turns toward you, it shifts from a survival mechanism into a quiet act of devotion. You'll notice it in the way they remember things you didn't think they were paying attention to. That offhand comment you made about your favorite coffee shop 3 weeks ago. They'll show up with a drink from that exact place. That story you shared about a difficult childhood memory. They'll adjust their behavior around that topic without you having to remind them. It's not performative. They're not doing it for credit. It's simply that you matter enough for their mind to store those details. This is a kind of intimacy most people overlook. We often think love has to be loud, constant, and verbal. But for an avoidant, love is quiet, it's attentive, and it's practical. They might not tell you they care, but they'll show up by being deeply attuned to your world. They're listening when you don't think they are. They're cataloging your preferences, your moods, your triggers. Not to manipulate, but to keep you safe inside the connection. This is where their avoidant nature works in your favor. Because they are so naturally cautious, so naturally tuned to subtle shifts, they pick up on things others might miss. They notice when your tone changes, when your energy dips, when something's bothering you even if you're smiling. And when they secretly love you, they respond. They'll ask how you are, or they'll quietly do something to ease the weight you're carrying. It might be as simple as taking a task off your plate or sending a text at just the right moment. And here's the fascinating part. This attention often happens even while they're still fighting their own impulse to stay distant. Love creates a crack in the armor, and through that crack, empathy pours out. They may not yet be ready to share their feelings, but their actions betray them. Their care leaks through the very walls they built to keep people out. You might even catch them remembering things about you that you forgot yourself. Something you said months ago, some detail about your dream or your goal that you thought went unnoticed. And when they bring it up later, it hits you. They were listening the entire time. That is their way of saying, you are significant to me. What matters to you matters to me. This is why paying attention to their behavior is so powerful. With an avoidant, love is rarely about the big declaration. It's about the tiny, consistent moments that, when added up, paint a picture of someone who is more invested than they'll admit. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether an avoidant cares, watch what they remember, because remembering is how they love, and when they love, they don't forget. Here's a 600-word expansion of key point 4, crafted to flow seamlessly with the other 3 points and carry the same Tony Robbins-style energy. The final and perhaps most powerful sign that an avoidant secretly loves you is when their actions start to contradict their words. This is where the truth reveals itself, not in what they say, but in what they can't help but do. Because here's the thing, avoidants often say they don't want closeness. They tell you they need space, they insist they're not ready for commitment. They downplay their feelings. And yet, watch what happens when you step back. Watch what happens when life puts you in a moment where they have to choose whether to show up or stay detached. This is where their heart betrays their fear. Maybe they rush to your side when you're in trouble, even though just days earlier they claimed they didn't want to get too involved. Maybe they defend you when you're not in the room, even if they acted indifferent when you were. Maybe they go out of their way to support your goals or protect you from harm, while still insisting they don't do relationships. This inner contradiction is not hypocrisy. It's evidence of the war going on inside them. Their old protective patterns are wrestling with their deeper truth. They care about you, and caring means risking pain. This tug of war is one of the clearest indicators that you've reached them on a profound level. It takes someone significant to pull an avoidant out of their comfort zone. When they start behaving in ways that contradict their self-image. When they surprise themselves with how much they show up for you. That's love rewriting their story in real time. And here's the beauty of it. Those actions are often more honest than their words. Words can be rehearsed, deflective, even misleading, not out of malice, but because the avoidant is trying to protect themselves. But behavior doesn't lie. When they go out of their way to make sure you're okay, when they follow through on something that matters to you, when they keep choosing connection despite the fear that screams at them to run, those are acts of love that are far more trustworthy than any verbal confession. It's also why patience is crucial in these moments. If you try to force them to match their words to their actions too quickly, they may shut down. The goal isn't to make them admit they love you before they're ready. It's to notice the evidence that they already do. Over time, those actions become stepping stones toward emotional alignment. Their words will eventually catch up to what their heart has been doing all along. This is the part where a lot of people give up, because the avoidant doesn't say the right thing. But if you can look past the words, you might see that they are already loving you in the way they know how. And that love is growing stronger every time they choose to act on it, even if their mind is still trying to resist. So here's the truth: if their words say one thing but their behavior keeps pulling you closer, believe the behavior. Actions are the language of a heart that's still learning how to speak. And if you take nothing else away from this, remember this love is revealed not by what someone claims, but by what they consistently do, especially when it costs them something to do it.